In this video, I'd like to have you join me as I take a look at Firewall 1 to make sure that our topology as it's set up in our diagram matches what we have actually on the firewall. Let's take a close look at Firewall 1. And just as a heads up of what I hope to be there, my intention is that Firewall 1 has two interfaces that are being used as part of the SD-WAN zone here. It's got an interface associated with it that we're using for management of this device. We're going to manage it at .71. Also on the SD-WAN zone, its interface IP addresses are going to end in .71 on the 23.1.2 and 24.1.2 networks respectively. And then over here for VLAN 10 and VLAN 20, which is the 10.1.10 network and 10.1.20 networks, we're going to use the IP address of .1 on each of those subnets. And Firewall 1 is currently in single VDOM mode. So let's take a look at the interface and verify those aspects. All right, so currently here we are at Firewall 1. And under System, we click on Settings. We can verify a few things here, including the next generation firewall mode that we're in. So currently we're in profile based and we are using centralized source NAT. Fantastic. I also want to verify my timeout here. So my timeout is set to 60 minutes. And for training, that's a better idea than the default of 5 minutes. However, in a production environment, you want a fairly short timeout. That way, if you're not using the firewall or working with it, it's going to require authentication again to get back in. Also up here at the top, I notice there's no information regarding VDOMs, and that's because we're using single VDOM mode. So let's go take a look at the interfaces. So we'll click on Network, and under Network, we'll click on Interfaces. So currently, just for simplicity in the lab, I'm only using one physical port. That's the only one that's lit up right here. So that is the port that goes over to my physical switch. And on that physical switch, it's connected to a port that's doing trunking. So we can have details on the physical interface itself, which will be sent over without 802.1q tagging. And then we can create VLAN sub-interfaces below that for all of our needs. So in a production environment, we'd probably want to leverage multiple ports, physical ports, for more throughput. In my lab, I'm just going to use one physical port and then logically create all my other interfaces that I need to using VLAN interfaces. So here is internal one that I'm currently using. And on the physical interface, I have the management IP address of 192.168.1.71. All right, so that's our management interface. And then I've got two sub interfaces, two VLAN interfaces, one for WAN A and one for WAN B. And those are both included as part of SD-WAN. We'll take a peek at that real quick. So here's our SD-WAN, here's our SD-WAN zone, and there's those two interfaces that are participating as part of that SD-WAN zone. Now, for more details on the nitty-gritty on setting up SD-WAN zones and so forth, please check out our NSE 4 training where we go through all those details in the configuration, setup, and verification of those parts. But for here, I just want to verify that what I thought we had in place, we actually do for the lab. So let's go back to our interfaces. We'll expand this one interface that we're doing trunking under. So those were our WAN interfaces in the appropriate VLANs. Then I've got two more VLAN interfaces, one supporting VLAN 10, and one supporting VLAN 20. And there's the IP addresses associated with those as well. And it looks like I have some DHCP clients. Fantastic. And let's also make sure the routing is in place. So here under Network and Static Routes, here I've got a default route that's leveraging our SD-WAN zone. Fantastic. And we can just do a quick check right here and verify that we can reach the outside world. So we'll do an execute ping out to www.fortinet.com, press enter, and that means DNS is working, great, great, great. IP connectivity with ICMP is working, great, great, great. So we can assume that our default routing is working to the outside world. Now also on the firewall, we're configured for centralized source NAT. So if we go down to policies and objects and click here on central source NAT, we can verify that as well. So here we have our central NAT, and this states that traffic is being routed between the interfaces of VLAN 10 or VLAN 20 and going out the WAN A or WAN B, which are both associated with our SD-WAN zone, then to go ahead and do address translation. And of course, routing and address translation isn't enough. We also need to make sure we're permitting traffic. So if we go to firewall policies, here we have two policies, VLAN 10 to outside and VLAN 20 to outside. I see traffic on both, which is a very good sign. I also see here that the source for that role specifies the 10.1.10 subnet. And here it's all, let's modify that real quick just by modifying policy ID 2. And let's say that the source, instead of being anything, needs to be coming from the 10.1.20 subnet. So I have an address object right there for that. That looks great. Looks like we have some security profiles in place. That looks great. And we'll click on OK. And let me go ahead and clean up the columns a little bit. And I'm going to drag the column for security profiles over here a little bit to the left. And currently, one of the security profiles is the Our Outbound SSL. Let's go ahead and click on that. We'll click on Edit. And in this inspection profile for outbound SSL traffic, we are using a signing certificate that has been issued by my local CA. So we can verify that real quick just by going to System and Certificates. And if the certificates option doesn't show up, just go to Feature Visibility and make sure certificates is enabled right there, which it is already. So we'll go back to certificates, and there is the remote CA certificate that this FortiGate trusts, which is my internal CA server. And there's a signing certificate that's been issued by that certificate authority. So as a quick check, we have routing in place, we've got address translation in place, and we have firewall policies that should be allowing traffic, including doing outbound SSL inspection. So let's go ahead and bring up a couple clients, one in VLAN 10, one in VLAN 20, and we'll verify that everything works. So here's one for VLAN 10, and here's one in VLAN 20 based on the titles here, VLAN 10, VLAN 20. So these are just VMs that I set up inside of VMware, and I associate their network interface cards with the appropriate port group, VLAN 10 or VLAN 20, which logically puts these devices in those VLANs. In fact, let me show you that real quick. So here back on the ESXi host, let me make the font a little bit bigger. We just sort based on devices that are powered on. Here I have my VLAN 10 device, and we take a look at the details for that. Here it's showing that the network adapter is associated with VLAN 10. So this VM's network interface card is associated with that VLAN. And if we go back to virtual machines, and we sort once again based on powered on, and we go to the Linux device on VLAN 20, we see here its network interface card is associated with VLAN 20. So let's test them both out. We'll start off with our client machine in VLAN 10. We'll open up a browser and just open up a few websites. Fortinet works, Facebook works, eBay, YouTube, Amazon, PayPal, etc. Also, because we're doing the outbound SSL inspection, if we go to, for example, eBay, and we click on the little lock symbol here, and then we click on connection is secure, we can then click on the certificate is valid portion here, and issued by training at CBT. So that's the certificate on the FortiGate that's re-signing the certificates in this example from eBay. All right, and let's try the other VM2, which is in VLAN 20. So we'll open up a browser there, and we'll grab Skype, and let's go ahead and grab Twitter, and let's grab YouTube once again. All right, all that is flowing. And as a result of that, if we go back to our dashboard and status, our sessions are currently around over 400. That's fantastic. However, as far as the CPU utilization, it's hardly breaking a sweat. So once again, just to confirm on Firewall 1, if we go to Network and Interfaces, I've got one physical interface being used. That goes over to my physical switch. And then beneath that, I've carved out VLAN sub-interfaces for each of our needs, including VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and both of my WAN interfaces as well. So that looks pretty good to me. We've just confirmed the details of what I thought was in place are in place here on Firewall 1. We've also taken a look at how it's connected into the virtualized environment. Next, let's take a look at Firewall 2, which is set up in multi-VDOM mode. I'll see you there in just a moment. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.